rapid fire, and today's game is...
Kingdom of the Seven Stones was released on the C64 in October of 2024 and published through The Future Was 8-Bit. A total throwback to one of the first genres of game I ever played on any computer, the text adventure game, or for me anyway, the graphic text adventure game. Spending countless hours on early games such as Arrow of Death and The Dallas Quest by Datasoft, then graduating to Melbourne House's The Hobbit, and then moving over to Poloware games such as Transylvania, and then going to the big leagues with my personal favorites from Level 9 and Magnetic Scroll releases such as Corruption, Guild of Thieves, and Scapegoat. And if you want to see more about a lot of these games, please check out my 2 Adventure Collection specials for more on these classic games in the genre. I'm also lucky enough to also be joined by the creator of this game today, but I'll let him introduce himself.
Thanks for having me. My name is Robin Raymond, and I'm from Ottawa, Canada, and I'm the author of the graphical text adventure game called Kingdom of the Seven Stones. So a bit about myself. I've been programming for a long time, and while I mostly do C++ these days to pay the bills, I can say that my first programming love will always be on the Commodore system.
Jumping back into the genre of game is always pretty fun. You have to really adjust the mindset and skills, and embrace the storyline above everything else, and figure out new ways to solve puzzles. The first question I asked Robin is, were there any classic games that inspired his love of the genre?
My first experience with graphical text adventures was on an Apple II in my elementary school, which was called The Coveted Mirror. I loved that game. This captivated me, and from the moment I moved that bed to find an escape route, I was hooked. Another game I played and loved was called Ulysses and the Golden Fleece, which I had on my home Commodore 64 computer. I spent every spare moment I could playing that game and being enthralled and lost in that world of imagination. I wanted to create a game with ambiance, both visually and textually, to help the player be part of this world and hopefully get captivated by it. Both of those games that I fell in love with had beautiful graphics, and they gave clues about their worlds. And while the text parsers were not as powerful as like those you would find in the Infocom days, I felt like I was in control of the stories, and I loved that. I wanted to pay tribute to both of those games that inspired me all those years ago to be able to merge the 2 eras together for the Kingdom of the Seven Stones. I have some of the old world mythology beings survive from those ancient times, which then create challenges as well as opportunities to help you overcome the evil that plagues the land.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
The story is what really drives the genre of games at the heart of it, and in Kingdom, you set out to basically help people across the land, become a legend, or a beacon of hope for all the people you encounter, and the quest you complete. It is actually quite vague in its overall plot, but that's not a negative in any way. I was curious though, if the storyline's vague open-ended design was intentional or not.
Yes, the vagueness was intentional. This was to mirror what I experienced when I first played games. For example, many of the load and save games would have very nondescript introductions and throw you directly into the game. You had to figure out why you were there and what was your purpose. I do leave a few breadcrumbs though. At the first junction, you have 2 paths to choose from. One path leads you into the town, and the other path leads you into a dark forest. And that dark forest tries to confuse you and keep you out because it's guarding the evil that looms over the town. I really like the idea of having innocent townsfolk unaware of the danger and tragedy that's about to befall them if they are left to their fate. And while the player knows they have to accomplish something, the people in the town do not. The other clue that I leave in the game is that the first character that you run across is a guard that warns you that the only path is a righteous path. And not to give out too many spoilers, but it's possible to behave in a malicious manner in the game, including turning people to stone or stealing objects to get ahead, but those will backfire because the townsfolk will turn against you and no longer cooperate in ways that you will need to be able to complete the game.
Gameplay is very traditional for the genre. Compass directions for movements, north, south, east, west, and everything in between, collecting objects and using them to solve or complete quests. I actually did a video when I first started this channel on how to play the genre of game. If you've never played them before or need some help, and I'll leave links in the video description if you're interested. The parser system here is quite good, meaning it understands most basic commands you're going to need for this game. It emphasizes talking to characters especially. This is how you get most of your quests or find out what people across the land want or need. Some require a series of events to happen to obtain an item. Others are quite simple in nature, like returning a blacksmith's axe you find in the forest, or reading a poem to a blind woman. Even though in the beginning you do feel a little bit lost, once you visit the main castle village, quests come in fast and furious, and you may want to write some of those down, or else you're definitely going to lose track of them all. Also remember, just like back in the day, simply type in the command help and you'll get a lot of basic information that'll aid you to play the game and understand its parser system easier. I asked Robin how easy it is now to make these kinds of games with all the modern tools available.
All of the development was using modern tooling for Kingdom of the Seven Stones. In many ways, many of the tools I would have needed to build the game were around in the 80s, but the speed and ease of development were not the same. With modern editors, you can keep dozens of program files open simultaneously, and reloading the game and freezing at breakpoints and examining the raster lines and the emulator chip states are all done with a few simple clicks and button pushes. It's inconceivable to have that level of speed of development back in the 80s. I used Python to compile all of the text, graphics, and songs, and the game objects and locations into game assets. I used Martin Piper's Music Studio 2, which he generously helped me throughout, to convert MIDI files into SID sequences. And all the debugging that I did was done mainly on the Vice emulator, as it was capable of running the 8 megabit cartridges. This level of tooling would have been a dream to have in the 80s.
The graphics in this game are quite impressive. To my untrained programming eye, they look like digitized photos. On a CRT though, they look obviously even more stunning. But with over 100 plus images in the game overall, which is a huge amount considering the quality, I was wondering about the method around the graphics and simply the sheer size of the game itself, which would have traditionally come on about 3 double-sided discs.
In the past, many graphical text adventures would rely upon vector drawings, which are stylishly more cartoonish in nature. They were absolutely beautifully done, and I have no criticism of them. But that level of skill to be able to draw those images and then translate them into a series of drawing commands, that's something I didn't have. I was sadly not blessed with the ability to draw in a comic book style. So yes, this game uses digitized photos, which is yet another reason why I could not have made the game back in the peak of the Commodore 64's popularity. Back then, image scanners were in their early infancy, extremely expensive and uncommon. Fortunately, I found a program called the Dithertron. Takes an image, introduces purposeful noise to create perception of additional colors that don't exist on the actual system, but it didn't quite properly support the color block RAM. So I spent a fair bit of time modifying the tool to support the Commodore. As for where I sourced images, this might be a tad more controversial, but I used AI to help me, and then edited the images to make them be what I needed them to be. To me, AI is an enabling technology, because without it, I don't think that such a small niche market could justify the amount of money that I would need to hire artists to produce these sets of images, let alone create sets with real actors dressed for the part and then transpose them into 3D virtual spaces. Basically, it was either AI or have no game at all. But having said that, of course, I'm all for artists being paid for their work and the ethical usage of artist material in AI training models. These tools certainly allow you to have creative ways to do things that you wouldn't normally have. Each image in the game takes about 8 kilobytes of space. While that might not seem like a lot, when you have over 100 unique images for each of the locations, and you factor in all the image variations needed to display or remove objects from the scenes, that adds up fast. Then you also need to have space for the text that goes with those locations. I probably have around 200 kilobytes of just text alone in this game. I also included a handful of songs at key locations to further capture the imagination. And all of this was done just to create the game's ambiance. The future was 8-bit. Put a call out on their prior website asking for game developers who could take advantage of their newly released cartridge format called the Marina 64. What this cartridge allows you to do is basically have up to a capacity of 8 megabits of space. So I answered their calling, and they graciously agreed to take me on board and publish the game if I could produce something that was well done and interesting and worthwhile. I ended up extensively using compression to fit the game into the cartridge, but unfortunately a few things did need to be sacrificed. Nothing I felt that really changed the trajectory of the game, and I tried to make it so that everything still flowed properly.
Wandering this land is pretty awesome. It feels very open and non-restrictive. And to help you along, if you downloaded the digital version, you get a starter walkthrough to help you get going, and even a map so you can get a better idea of where you are and how big the actual world is. There are many musical tracks in the game as well, queued in certain locations, which is a nice addition, as these games, generally speaking, are usually silent or may have the odd spot effect. Which begs the question, how long did it take Robin to make this game from start to finish?
The development of the game took well over a year. Mind you, I do have a day job where I develop C++, so I was only able to complete the game during my spare time. This was a true passion project for me though, so I was motivated to finish as soon as I could. I wanted to contribute to the community something new and fresh as a tribute to all the games that I spent so many hours playing in my youth.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Overall, I really enjoyed my time with this game. The world is pretty big and there's interesting characters around every little corner. Most of the puzzles and situations are quite logical, and you can even be a complete bastard to most people, but that will ultimately be your downfall. I, like Robin, have zero artistic drawing skills, so being able to use AR to help make things we could never do before possible is very liberating creatively. Cue the melodramatic meltdowns in the comment section. I just wanted to thank Robin and every creator out there, as always, for taking the time to make this game for our good old humble C64. It's always appreciated, not just by me, but I'm sure everyone who enjoyed this obscure subgenre from back in the day. As usual, I'll end this with asking Robin a question I do for everybody else. What's the drive to make a C64 game in the modern age?
These older machines represent an era of simplicity and innocence at the birth of the computer revolution. A person can fully control everything that's happening within these computers while being challenged to squeeze everything possible out of the limited hardware resources that you have available. It's really hard to replicate that. So if I was going to produce something that a small number of people would enjoy, I would want to do it for a system like the Commodore 64 to be a part of breathing new life into the platform. I love how our communities still keep all of these retro systems alive and not just discarded into the e-waste trash bins of history. I also think these machines are excellent learning machines. Modern computers have too many black boxes between the programmer and the hardware. This is where I first learned to program, and I'm forever grateful to have learned how computers work during this era. And I was lucky enough to come into an era before the operating systems took complete control of everything. Well, thanks for having me on your show, and for anyone who wants to reach out to me, feel free to email me at robin@myjoe.com. Thanks again.
The game is available as a physical cartridge from the Future Was 8-bit website, and it's both PAL and NTSC compatible. When you buy it, you can also request a digital download if you need it, which includes the map and the small walkthrough. It's also available straight from Robin himself on his itch page in digital form, and I'll leave all the links in the video description. Thank you for watching.